Chapter 10. The clank and thud of the cell door, first opening and then closing, awoke the younger of the two Skara sisters. The elder was sitting at a table, busy scraping dried porridge from the bottom of a tin bowl.
"Well, how was it in court, Kenna?"
Without a word, Joanna Selborne, also known as Kenna, sat down on her plank bed with her elbows resting on her knees and her forehead on her hands. The younger Skara yawned, belched and farted loudly. Geralt, crouching on the opposite bed, muttered something indistinct and turned his head away. He was furious at Kenna, the sisters, and the whole world. In normal jails, the inmates were still traditionally separated according to sex. In military citadels, it was different. Emperor Fergus var Emrys, confirming women's equality in the imperial army by special decree, had already ruled that if it was to be emancipation, then let it be emancipation. Equality ought to be complete and outright, without any exceptions or special privileges for either sex. Since then, inmates had been serving time in mixed cells in the strongholds and citadels.
"Well,"
the older Skara repeated,
"are they letting you out?"
"Like hell they are," said Kenna bitterly, head still resting on her hands. "I'll be lucky if they don't hang me. Sod it! I told the truth, hid nothing. Well, almost nothing. But when those whoresons started grilling me, first they made a fool out of me in front of everyone. Then it turned out I wasn't a credible person, but a criminal element. And right at the end, they brought out my complicity in a plot aimed at subversion with the aim of an insurrection."
"Subversion?"
The older Skara nodded, as though she understood exactly what it was about.
"Ah, if it's subversion, then you're in the shit, Kenner."
"As if I didn't know that." The younger Skara stretched, yawned like a leopard, widely and noisily, jumped down from the upper bunk, vigorously kicked away Kohut's stool, which was blocking her way, and spat on the floor beside it. Kohut growled, but didn't dare do anything more. Kohut was mortally offended by Kenna, but was afraid of the sisters. When Kenna had been assigned to the cell 3 days earlier, it soon turned out that Kohut, if he tolerated the emancipation and equality of women at all, had his own views on the subject. He had thrown a blanket over Kenna's upper half in the middle of the night and intended to avail himself of the lower half, which he certainly would have done, but for the fact that he had happened upon a teleempathic. Kenna penetrated his brain so deeply that Kohut howled like a werewolf and cavorted around the cell as though bitten by a tarantula. Then, out of pure vindictiveness, Kenna telepathically forced him to go down on all fours and bang his head rhythmically against the metal-plated cell door. When the warders, alarmed by the dreadful thumping, opened the door, Kohut butted one of them, for which he received 5 lashes with a metal-tipped truncheon and as many kicks. Summing up, Kohut didn't get the gratification he'd been hoping for, and took offence at Kenna. He didn't even dare to take his revenge, because the next day the Skara sisters joined them in the cell. The fair sex thus formed the majority, and furthermore it soon turned out that the sisters' views on equality were similar to Kohut's, if completely the other way around concerning the roles ascribed to the sexes. The younger Skara looked at the man lasciviously and made explicit comments, while the older cackled and rubbed her hands together. As a result, Kohut slept with a stool with which he planned to defend his honour. Nonetheless, his chances and prospects were meagre. Both Skaras had served on the front line and were veterans of numerous battles, so would not have been daunted by the stool. Had they wanted to rape him, they would have, even if the man had been armed with a battle-axe. Kenna, though, was certain the sisters were only joking. Well, almost certain. The Skara sisters were in the slammer for assaulting an officer, while in the case of Kohut, who had served as a quartermaster, an investigation was ongoing into a notorious major scandal regarding the theft of army bows, which was creating ever-widening ripples.
"In the shit, Kenner," the older Skara repeated. "You've got yourself in a fine pickle, or rather, they got you into it. How come you never bloody caught on it was a political game?"
"Humph." Skara glanced at her, not quite knowing how to interpret her monosyllabic response. Kenna looked away. "I'm not going to tell you something I kept quiet about in front of the judges, am I?" she thought. "That I knew what kind of game I was getting tangled up in, or when and how I found out."
"You've landed yourself in a sorry mess,"
said the younger Skara solemnly. She was the much more dull-witted one, who, Kenna was certain, understood nothing of what it was about.
And what finally happened with that Cintran princess?
The older Scarra kept probing.
I mean, you finally nabbed her, didn't you?
We did, if you could call it that. What's the date today?
September the 22nd. It's the equinox tomorrow.
Ah, well, that's a queer coincidence. Tomorrow, it'll be a year to the day since those events. A year already. Kenna stretched out on her pallet, hands clasped behind her head. The sisters remained silent, hoping it had been an introduction to a story. Nothing doing, sisters dear, thought Kenna, looking at the obscene drawings and even more obscene comments scrawled on the planks of the upper bunk. There won't be any story. It's not even that that bastard coat smells like a bloody narc. I just don't feel like talking about it. I don't feel like remembering it. What happened a year ago, after Bonnard gave us the slip in Claremont? We'd arrived there 2 days too late, she recalled. The trail had already gone cold. No one knew where the bounty hunter had gone. No one apart from the merchant Huvernagel, that is. But Huvernagel didn't want to talk to Skellen, or even have him in the house. He communicated through his servants that he had no time and wouldn't grant them an audience. Tawny Owl was cross and indignant, but what could he do? It was Ebbing. He didn't have the necessary jurisdiction, and we could do nothing about Huvernagel any other way. I mean, our way, for he had a private army down in Claremont, and we couldn't exactly declare war. Boreas Munn sniffed around. Dacre Silliphant and Ola Harsheim tried bribery. Till Ekrada, elven magic. I used telepathy and listened to his thoughts, but it wasn't much use. All we learned was that Bonnard had left the town through the southern gate. But before he left... In Claremont, there was a tiny little temple with larches by the southern gate and the small marketplace. Before leaving Claremont, Bonnard had cruelly beaten Falca with a knout in the square in front of the temple. Before everybody's eyes, including the temple priests. He yelled that he'd prove to her who her lord and master was, that he was flogging her with a knout as he wished, and if he so wished, he'd flog her to death, because no one would stand up for her. No one would come to her aid, neither people nor gods. The younger Scarra was looking out of the window, hanging onto the grating. The older one was eating porridge from the bowl. Code took the stool, lay down and covered himself with a blanket. The bell in the guardhouse tolled. The guards on the walls yelled out their presence. Kenna turned her face to the wall. We met several days later, she thought. Me and Bonnard, face to face. I looked into his inhuman fish-like eyes, thinking only of one thing, how he'd beaten the girl. And I looked into his thoughts, for a moment, and it was like sticking my head into a dug-up grave. That was at the equinox. And the day before, the 22nd of September, I'd realized that an invisible spy had wormed his way among us. Stefan Skellen, the imperial coroner, listened without interrupting, but Kenna saw his face changing. Again, Selborn, he drawled. Say it again, for I don't believe my own ears. Cautiously, my lord coroner, she murmured. Pretend to be angry. That I've come to you with a request, and you won't grant it. For the sake of appearances, I mean. I'm not mistaken, I'm certain. An unseen guest has been hanging around us for 2 days. An invisible spy. Tawny Owl, to give him his due, was clever, and understood at once. No, Selborn, I refuse, he said loudly, but without over-dramatizing his tone or expression. Discipline applies to everyone. There are no exceptions. Please, at least listen, Lord Coroner. Kenna didn't have Tawny Owl's talent, failed to avoid awkwardness, but in the scene being played out, awkwardness and embarrassment by the petitioner were permissible. Please, at least see fit as to listen. Speak, Selborn, but be brief and to the point. He's been spying on us for 2 days, she muttered, pretending she was humbly presenting her argument. Since Claremont. He has to ride behind us secretively, and when we're camped, he approaches unseen, moves around among people, and listens. He listens, the sodding spy. Skellen didn't have to pretend to be stern and angry. The fury was trembling in his voice. How did you uncover him?
Yesterday, when you were giving Lord Silliphant his orders outside the tavern, the tomcat, sleeping on the bench, hissed and flattened its ears. It seemed suspicious to me because there wasn't anyone on that side. And then I picked up something, a thought, kind of, an unfamiliar thought and will. When there are familiar, ordinary thoughts all around, an unfamiliar thought like that, Lord Coroner, is as if someone were shouting. I started taking heed intensely. I doubled my efforts, and now I can sense him.
Can you always sense him?
No, not always. He has some kind of magical protection. I only sense him from very close, and even then, not every time. So I have to be vigilant, because I never know if he's not hiding nearby.
Just don't scare him away, Tony Owl muttered. Don't scare him away. I want him alive, Selborne. What do you suggest?
We'll give him the pancake treatment.
The pancake treatment?
Quiet, Lord Coroner.
But... Oh, never mind. Very well. I'm giving you a free hand.
Tomorrow, make sure we stop and bill it in some village or other. I'll sort out the rest. And now, for the sake of appearances, give me a dressing down and I'll go away.
I can't, really. He smiled at her with his eyes and winked slightly, immediately assuming the overbearing air of a stern commander. For I'm pleased with you, Miss Selborne.
He said Miss. Miss Selborne, as though to an officer.
He winked again. No, he said, and brandished an arm, playing his role splendidly. Request denied. Dismissed.
Yes, sir.
The next day, in the late afternoon, Skellen ordered his soldiers to make camp in a village by the River Leet. The village was prosperous, ringed by a palisade, and they rode in through a fine gate of freshly cut pine palings. The name of the village was Unicorn, and it took its name from its small stone temple, inside which there was a straw effigy of a unicorn.
I remember, Kenna recalled, how we laughed at that straw idol, and the village headman gravely explained that the sacred unicorn which looked after the village had many years before been made of gold, then silver, then copper. There were several versions in bone and several in hardwood, but all of them had been stolen. People came from far away to rob or steal it. Things had only been peaceful since the unicorn had been made of straw. We set up camp in the village. As agreed, Skellen occupied the headman's hall. Less than an hour later, we'd given the spy the pancake treatment, in classic textbook fashion.
Please come closer, Tony Owl ordered loudly. Please come closer and take a look at this document. Hold on. Is everybody here? So I won't have to explain twice. Ola Harsheim, who had just taken a sip of cream somewhat watered down with sour milk from a milking pail, licked the creamy moustache from his lips, put down the vessel, looked around and counted. Dacre Silliphant, Bert Brigden, Neratin Seka, Till Ikrada, Joanna Selborne. The Feetsy's not here. Summon him. Creel? Duffy Creel? To the commander for the briefing, to receive important orders, at a double. Duffy Creel ran into the hall out of breath. Everybody's here, Lord Coroner, Ola Harsheim reported. Leave the window open. We could expire from the smell of garlic in here. Open the door, too. Make a draught. Brigden and Creel obediently opened the window and the door. Kenna, meanwhile, thought once again that Tony Owl would make a really splendid actor. Please, step this way, gentlemen. I've received this document from the Emperor, confidential and of extraordinary gravity. Your attention, please.
Now!
Yelled Kenna, sending a powerful directional impulse, whose effect on the senses was similar to being struck by lightning. Ola Harsheim and Dacre Silliphant picked up the milk pail and simultaneously flung the cream in the direction Kenna was indicating. Till Ikrada vigorously emptied a flour barrel which had been hidden under the table. A creamy, floury shape, amorphous at first, appeared on the floor of the chamber. But Bert Brigden was alert. Correctly judging where the pancake's head might be, he whacked it as hard as he could with a cast-iron frying pan. Then everybody threw themselves at the spy, who was plastered all over with cream and flour, tore the hat of invisibility from his head, and seized his arms and legs. After upturning the table, they tied the captive's limbs to the legs. They pulled off his boots and foot wraps and stuffed one of them into his mouth, which was open and ready to shout. In order to crown their work, Dufizzi-Creel kicked the captive hard in the ribs, and the others took pleasure in watching the spy's eyes bulge out of their sockets. "Magnificent work," commented Tawny Owl, who hadn't moved during the entire brief incident, but had stood with his arms crossed on his chest. "Bravo! Congratulations! Above all to you, Miss Selborne."
Bloody hell, thought Kenner. If it carries on like this, I really am liable to end up an officer.
Mr. Brigden, Stefan Skelen said coldly, standing over the prisoner, spread out between the table legs. "Put the irons in the coals, please. Mr. Ekrada, please make sure no children are hanging around outside." He leaned over and looked into the bound man's eyes. "You haven't shown your face for ages, Ryans," he said. "I was beginning to think some misfortune had befallen you." The bell in the guardhouse, the signal for the changing of the guard, struck. The Skara sisters snored euphoniously. Kohut, hugging the stool, smacked his lips in his sleep.
He played the hero, Kenner recalled, pretending to be brave, that foolhardy Ryance. The sorcerer, Ryance, given the pancake treatment and tied to the legs of a table with his bare feet sticking up. He was playing the hero, but wasn't fooling anybody, least of all me. Tawny Owl warned us he was a sorcerer, so I scrambled his thoughts to stop him casting spells or sending for magical help, and read his thoughts while I was about it. He was blocking my way in, but when he caught a whiff of the smoke from the coal of the brazier where the irons were heating up, his magical protection and blockades burst along all their seams like old breeches, and I was able to read him freely. His thoughts didn't differ from those of other people I've read in like situations. The thoughts of people who are about to be tortured. Chaotic, trembling thoughts full of fear and despair. Cold, slimy, wet, foul-smelling thoughts, like a corpse's entrails. In spite of that, when the gag was removed, the sorcerer Ryance tried to play the hero. Well, well, Skelen, you've caught me. You win. Congratulations. A deep bow to your technique, expertise, and professionalism. Splendidly trained operatives. Truly, it's enviable. And now please release me from this unseemly position.
Tawny Owl drew up a chair and straddled it, resting his clasped fingers and chin on the backrest. He looked down at the captive and said nothing.
"Have me released, Skelen," Ryans repeated. "And then order your subordinates to leave. What I have to say is meant for your ears only."
"Mr. Brigden," Tawny Owl said, without turning his head, "what colour are the irons?"
"A bit longer, sir."
"Miss Selborne?"
"I'm having difficulty reading him now," Kenner shrugged. "He's too afraid. The fear's drowning out all other thoughts, and there are lots of those thoughts, including a few he's trying to hide, behind magical screens. But it's not hard. I can—"
"That won't be necessary. We'll try the classic method, a red-hot iron."
"Bloody hell!" the spy howled. "Skelen, you surely don't mean—"
Tawny Owl leaned over, his face a little changed.
"First, it's Mr. Skelen," he hissed. "Secondly, yes, absolutely, I plan to order your soul scorched, Ryans. I shall do it with the utmost satisfaction, for I shall treat it as an expression of historical justice. I'll wager you don't understand."
Ryans remained silent, so Skelen continued.
"You see, Ryans, I advised Vathier de Rideau to scorch your heels back then, 7 years ago, when you were fawning to the Imperial Intelligence Service like a cur, begging for mercy and the privilege to be a traitor and a double agent. I repeated that advice 4 years ago when you shamelessly kissed Emir's ass, mediating in contacts with Vilgefortz. When, during the hunt for the Sintren wench, you were promoted from a humble little turncoat to being virtually first resident spy, I wagered Vathier that when burned, you'd say who you serve. No, I've got that wrong. That you'd name everyone you serve, and everyone you betray. And then I said, you'll see, you'll be astonished, Vathier, how many points on the 2 lists correspond. But well, Vathier de Rideau didn't listen to me, and now surely regrets it. But nothing's lost. I'll only toast you a little, and when I know what I want to know, I shall leave you to Vathier's disposal.
and he'll flay you, slowly, one piece at a time. Tawny Owl removed a handkerchief and a vial of perfume from his pocket. He sprinkled the perfume liberally on the handkerchief and pressed it to his nose. The perfume smelled pleasant, but nonetheless, Kenner felt like vomiting. "The iron, Mr. Brigden." "I'm tracking you on Vilgefort's orders," Rience roared. "It concerns the girl. By tracking your troop, I hope to get ahead of you, reach that bounty hunter before you did. I was going to try to negotiate the wench away from him, not from you, because you want to kill her and Vilgefortz needs her alive. What else do you want to know? I'll tell you everything." "Whoa there," Tawny Owl called. "Not so fast. Why, a fellow's head could ache from such a racket and mass of information. Can you imagine, gentlemen, what will happen when we burn him? He'll scream us to death." Creel and Siliphant cackled raucously. Kenner and Naratin Seika didn't join in the merriment. Neither did Bert Brigden, who had just then removed the iron from the coals and was examining it critically. The iron was so hot it seemed to be transparent, as though it wasn't iron, but a glass tube full of molten fire. Rience saw it and shrieked. "I know how to find the bounty hunter and the girl," he yelled. "I know! I'll tell you." "I'm certain of that." Kenner, still trying to read his thoughts, grimaced, picking up a wave of desperate, impotent fury. Something snapped in Rience's brain. Yet another partition. "He'll say something out of fear," thought Kenner. Something he meant to keep until the end as a trump card, an ace, which would have beaten all the other aces in a last deciding hand for the highest stakes. Now he'll discard that ace out of a banal, revolting fear of pain. Suddenly, something popped in her head, and she felt heat in her temples, and then suddenly cold. And she knew. She knew Rience's hidden thought. "By the gods," she thought, "what a pickle I'm in." "I'll talk," howled the sorcerer, reddening and staring goggle-eyed in the coroner's face. "I'll tell you something genuinely important, Skellen. That here the rideau." Kenner suddenly heard another thought belonging to someone else. She saw Naratin Seika, with a hand on his dagger, moving towards the door. Boots pounded, and Boreas Munn rushed into the headman's hall. "My Lord Coroner! Quickly, sir! You'll never believe who's here!" Skellen gestured to Brigden, who was bending over towards the spy's heels with the iron, to stop. "You ought to play the lottery, Rience," he said, looking out of the window. "I've never met anyone in my life with such luck." Through the window, they could see a crowd and two people on horseback in the midst of it. Kenner knew at once who it was. She knew who the bony giant was, with the pale fish-like eyes, riding a powerful bay. And who the ashen-haired girl on the splendid black mare was, with hands bound and a collar around her neck, and a bruise on her swollen cheek. Visogota returned to his cottage in a foul mood, dejected, taciturn, even angry. The reason was a conversation with a peasant who had rowed over in a dugout canoe to collect some pelts. "Perhaps for the last time before the spring," said the peasant. "The weather's getting worse by the day. The rain and wind are so bad I'm afraid to venture onto the water. Ice on the puddles in the morning, blizzards are nigh, and after that frosts. The river will rise in the flood at any time. Then it's away with the dugout and out with the sleigh. But even a sleigh's no use on Periplot, naught but bogs as far as the eye can see." The peasant was right. Towards the evening it became overcast, and white flakes fell from the dark blue sky. A stiff easterly wind flattened the dry reeds, whipping up white crests over the surface of the wetland. It had become piercingly, bitterly cold. The day after tomorrow, thought Visogota, is the feast of Samhain. According to the elven calendar, it'll be the new year in 3 days. According to the human calendar, we'll have to wait another 2 months. Kelpie, Ciri's black mare, stamped and snorted in the barn. When he entered the cottage, he found Ciri rummaging around in his chests. He let her, even encouraged her. Firstly, it was quite a new activity, after riding Kelpie and leafing through books. Secondly, there were plenty of his daughter's things in the chests, and the girl needed warm clothing. Several changes of clothing, for in the cold and damp it took many days before the laundry finally dried. Ciri was selecting, trying on, putting aside and discarding various items of clothing. Visogota was sitting at the table. He ate 2 boiled potatoes and a chicken wing, in silence. Good workmanship. She showed him some objects he hadn't seen in years, and had even forgotten he had. Did these also belong to your daughter? Was it a hobby of hers?
Yes, she loved it. She couldn't wait for the winter.
Can I take them?
Take what you want, he shrugged. They're of no use to me, if they'll come in handy, and if the boots fit. But are you packing, Ciri? Are you preparing to go?
She fixed her eyes on the pile of clothing. Yes, Visagota, she said after a brief silence. I've decided. Because, you see, there's no time to lose.
Your dreams?
Yes, she admitted a moment later. I saw very unpleasant things in my dreams. I'm not certain if they've taken place or are yet to happen. I have no idea if I can prevent it. But I must go. You see, once I felt aggrieved that the people closest to me didn't come to my aid, left me at the mercy of fate. But now I think they're the ones that need my help. I have to go.
Winter's coming.
That's precisely why I must go. If I stay, I'll be stuck here until spring. Until the spring, I'll be fretting in idleness and uncertainty, plagued by nightmares. I have to go right now to try to find the Tower of the Swallow, that teleporter. You worked out it'll take me a fortnight to reach the lake. I'd be there before the November full moon.
You can't leave your hideout now, he said with effort. Not now. They'll capture you. Ciri, your pursuers, they are very close. You cannot now.
She threw a blouse down onto the floor and sprang up. You've learned something, she said sharply. From the peasant who took the pelts. Tell me.
Ciri,
tell me, please.
He told her.
He was later to regret it.
The devil must have sent them, good Sir Hermit, mumbled the peasant, breaking off from counting the pelts. Must have been the devil. They've been galloping through the forest since the equinox, searching for some maid. Frightening folk, yelling and threatening, but always riding on, never tarrying long enough to do too much harm. But now they've thought up somewhat new. In some villages and settlements, they've left some, what were it? Scent trees? They ain't no trees, good sir, scent or otherwise, just simply 3 or 4 good-for-nothing scoundrels, naught but trouble. They say they're going to lie in wait the whole winter to see if the maid they're hunting doesn't creep out of some hidey-hole and venture into the village. Then that tree's supposed to nab her. Are they in your village too?
The peasant's face darkened and he ground his teeth.
Not in our village. We was lucky. But in Dundara, half a day from us, there's 4. They're quartered in the inn. Scoundrels, good Sir Hermit. Damned scoundrels. Rogues. They took their pleasure with the village wenches, and when the menfolk stood up to them, they killed them, good sir, without mercy. Killed them, dead. They killed people, 2, the headman and 1 other. And is there a punishment for such ne'er-do-wells, good sir? And is there a law? There's no punishment or law. A carter who came to Dundara with his wife and daughter, he said that years ago there used to be witches in the world, so they say. They dealt with every kind of villainy. We ought to send a witcher to Dundara. He'd give those rascals short shrift. Witches killed monsters, not people. They're knaves, good Sir Hermit, not people. Naught but knaves from hell. A witch is what's needed for them, no more, no less. Well, time I were going, good Sir Hermit. Ooh, winter's coming. Soon it'll be away with the dugout and out with the sleigh. And what them knaves from Dundara need, good sir, is a witcher.
Oh, that's right, Ciri repeated through clenched teeth. Oh, absolutely right. A witcher's what they need. Or a witcher girl. 4, is it? In Dundara, they say. And where is bloody Dundara? Upstream? Would I get there across the tussocks?
By the gods, Ciri, Visagota said in terror. You can't seriously be thinking.
Don't swear by the gods if you don't believe in them. And I know you don't.
Let's leave my views out of this. Ciri, what infernal ideas are you hatching? How can you even...
Now you leave my convictions alone, Visagota. I know what I have to do. I'm a witcher.
You're an unstable young person. he exploded. "You're a child who's been through traumatic experiences, a damaged child on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And more than that, you're sick with a craving for revenge, blinded by a lust for retribution. Don't you understand that?"
"I understand it better than you," she yelled, "because you have no idea what it means to be hurt. You have no idea about revenge, for no one has ever truly wronged you." She rushed out of the cottage. A bitterly cold draught briefly blew through the hallway and the main room before she slammed the door shut. Soon after, he heard neighing and the pounding of hooves. Agitated, he banged the plate down onto the table. Let her go, he thought angrily. Let her shake off the anger. It wasn't as if he was afraid for her. She'd ridden often enough among the bogs, by day and night. She knew the paths, causeways, tussocks and meadows. If, though, she did get lost, she'd only have to let go of the reins. Her black Kelpie knew the way home to the goat's barn. Some time after, when it was already very dark, he went out and hung the lantern on a post. He stood by the fence and listened out for the clatter of hooves or the splash of water. But the wind and the rustling of the reeds muffled all sound. The lantern on the post swayed crazily until it finally went out. And then he heard it. From far away. No, not from the direction Ciri had ridden towards, but on the other side, from the bogs. A savage, inhuman, long-drawn-out, plaintive cry. A howl. A moment of silence. And again. A banshee. An elven phantom, the harbinger of death. Visogota trembled from cold and from fear. He quickly headed back towards the cottage, muttering and humming under his breath, so as not to hear it at all, because he must not hear it. Kelpie emerged from the darkness before he managed to relight the lantern. "Go into the cottage," Ciri said gently and softly, "and don't leave. It's a foul night." They bickered again over supper.
"You seem to know a great deal about the problems of good and evil."
"Because I do, and not from scholarly books either."
"No, of course. You know it all from experience, from practice, for you've acquired plenty of experience in your long 16 years of life."
"I've gained enough. Quite enough."
"Congratulations, my learned friend."
"You can sneer," she clenched her teeth, "without having any idea how much evil you've done to the world. You aged scholars, you theoreticians with your books, with your centuries-old experience of reading moral treatises so diligently you didn't even have time to look out of the window to see what the world was really like. You philosophers, artificially shoring up artificial philosophies in order to earn salaries at universities. And since not a soul would pay you for the ugly truth about the world, you invented ethics and morality, nice optimistic sciences, except they're fallacious and deceitful.
There's nothing more deceitful than a half-baked judgment, miss, than a hasty and incautious conclusion.
You didn't find a remedy for evil, but I, a callow witcher, have an infallible remedy." He didn't respond, but his face must have betrayed him, because Ciri leapt up from the table. "Do you think I'm talking nonsense, making wild claims?"
"I think," he calmly replied, "you're speaking in anger. I think you're planning your revenge in anger, and I strongly urge you to calm down."
"I am calm. And revenge? Answer me. Why not? Why should I eschew revenge? In the name of what? Higher reasons. And what's higher than an order of things where evil deeds are punished? To you, O philosopher and ethicist, revenge is an improper deed, reprehensible, unethical, and ultimately unlawful. And I ask, where is the punishment for evil? Who should attest it, adjudge it, and inflict it? The gods you don't believe in? The great demiurge creator you've decided to replace the gods with? Or perhaps the law? Perhaps Nilfgaardian justice, imperial judgments, prefects? You naive old man.
And so it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, blood for blood, and for that blood more blood, a sea of blood. Do you want to drown the world in blood, oh naive, damaged girl? Is that how you mean to fight evil, little witcher?
Yes, just like that, for I know what evil fears. Not your ethics, Visigotta. Not sermons, not moral treatises about a worthy life. Evil fears pain, impairment, suffering, death, the end. When wounded, evil howls with pain like a dog. It rolls around on the floor and squeals, watching the blood spurt from its veins and arteries, seeing its bones stick out of stumps, seeing its guts crawl from its belly, sensing that with the cold, death is approaching. Then, and only then, does evil's hair stand on end, and evil finally yell, "Mercy! I repent of my sins! I'll be good and decent now, I swear! Just save me, staunch the blood, don't let me perish ignominiously!" Yes, O hermit, that's how you fight evil. If evil wants to do you harm, inflict pain on you, anticipate it, ideally when evil isn't expecting it. If, though, you didn't manage to anticipate evil, if you were harmed by evil, then pay it back. Catch it, ideally when it has forgotten, when it feels safe. Pay it back twofold, threefold. An eye for an eye? No. Both eyes for an eye. A tooth for a tooth? No. All its teeth for a tooth. Pay evil back. Make it howl with pain so its eyeballs burst from its howling. And then, looking down at the floor, you may confidently say, what's lying there won't harm anybody any longer. It won't threaten anyone. For how can it threaten anyone without any eyes, if it has no hands? How can it do any harm when its guts are trailing over the sand and the gore is soaking into it? And you, the hermit said slowly, stand with your bloodied sword in hand and look at the blood soaking into the sand. And you have the audacity to think that the age-old dilemma has been solved, the philosopher's dream has been attained. You think the nature of evil has been transformed? I do, she said defiantly, because what's lying on the ground with blood gushing from it is no longer evil. Perhaps it isn't yet good, but it certainly isn't evil anymore. They say, Visigotta said slowly, that nature abhors a vacuum. Whatever is lying on the ground, bleeding profusely, whatever died from your sword, is no longer evil. What is it, then? Have you ever thought about that? No, I'm a witcher. When they were teaching me, I swore I would act against evil, always, and without thinking. Because when you start thinking, she added hollowly, killing stops making sense. Revenge stops making sense. And you can't let that happen. He shook his head, but she gestured to him to stop arguing. It's time I finished my story, Visigotta. I've been unfolding it for you for 30 nights, from the equinox to Samhain. But I haven't told you everything. Before I leave, you have to learn what happened on the day of the equinox in the village called Unicorn. She groaned when he pulled her from the saddle. The hip he had kicked her in the day before was hurting. He tugged on the chain attached to the collar and pulled her towards a light-coloured building. Several armed men were standing in the doorway, and one tall woman. "Bonnard," said one of the men, slim and brown-haired, with a thin face, holding a brass-tipped knout. "It has to be said that you are full of surprises." "Greetings, Skellen." The man addressed as Skellen looked her straight in the eye for some time. She trembled under his gaze. "Well?" He addressed Bonnard again. "Will you explain at once, or perhaps bit by bit?" "I don't like explaining things in the courtyard, for you get a mouthful of flies. May we go inside?" "By all means." Bonnard yanked the chain. Another man was waiting in the main room. He was dishevelled and pale, and was probably the cook, because he was busy cleaning traces of flour and cream from his clothing. His eyes lit up at the sight of Ciri. He came closer. He wasn't the cook. She recognized him at once, remembered those hideous eyes and the ugly mark on his face. He was the one who had pursued her on Thanedd with the squirrels. She'd escaped him by jumping out of a window, and he had ordered the elves to jump after her. What had that elf called him? Rents?
Well, well, he said mordantly, jabbing a finger hard and painfully into her breast. Miss Ciri, we haven't seen each other since Thanedd. I've been looking for you a long, long time, miss, and I finally found you.
I don't know, sir, who you are, Bonnard said coldly. But what you've claimed to find is actually mine, so keep your mitts off if you value your fingers.
My name's Ryance.
The sorcerer's eyes flashed unpleasantly.
Kindly condescend to commit that to memory, Mr. Bounty Hunter, sir, and who I am will soon be revealed. Whom the maid belongs to will also soon be revealed. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. For now, I want to give her my regards and make a pledge. You don't have anything against that, I trust.
You are free to trust.
Ryance approached Ciri and looked into her eyes from close up. Your guardian, the hag Yennefer, he said slowly and scornfully, once fell into disfavor with me. And so when I got my hands on her, I, Ryance, taught her pain. With these hands, with these fingers. And I promised her that should you fall into my hands, princess, I would also teach you pain. With these hands, with these fingers.
Risky, Bonnard said softly. You're taking a great risk, Mr. Ryance, or whatever your name is, bothering my little girl and threatening her. She is vengeful, liable to hold it against you. I repeat, keep your hands, fingers, and all other parts of your body well away from her.
Enough!
Skellen cut them off without taking his curious eyes off Ciri. Stop it, Bonnard, and you too, Ryance. Calm yourself. I've shown you mercy, but I may change my mind and order you bound to the table legs again. Sit down, both of you. Let's talk like cultured people. Just the three of us, and no one else. For we have, it seems to me, much to talk about. But for now, we'll put the subject of our conversations under guard. Mr. Siliphant? Just guard her well. Bonnard handed Siliphant the end of the chain. Guard her with your life. Kenna stayed on the sidelines. Granted, she wanted to observe the wench whom everybody had recently been talking about, but she felt a strange aversion to pushing in amongst the small crowd surrounding Harsheim and Siliphant, who were taking the mysterious captive over to a post in the courtyard. Everybody was crowding around, jostling, peering. They were even trying to touch her, shove her, pull her. The girl trod stiffly, limping slightly, but held her head high. He's beaten her, thought Kenna, but he didn't break her.
So she must be Falker.
The maid's barely grown.
A maid, eh? A cutthroat.
I heard she slayed 6 men, the brute, in the arena in Claremont.
Then before that, how many others? The she-devil?
She-wolf? And the mare. What a mare, look. A horse of marvellous blood. And here, by Bonnart's saddle flap, what a sword. Ah, a marvel. Leave it alone, Dacre Siliphant growled. Don't touch. Get your hands off other people's things. Don't touch the girl either. Don't paw her, don't hinder or insult her. Show some charity. We know not that we shan't be executing her before dawn. May she at least know peace until that time.
If the wench is to go to her death, grinned Cyprian Fripp the younger, perhaps we could sweeten the remainder of her life and satiate her well? Throw her on the hay and bed her?
Aye, Cabernet Turant cackled. We could. Let us chill the hell if it's allowed. I tell you it's not allowed. Dacre cut them off. Naught else occupies your minds, you damned fornicators. I said leave the maid in peace. Andrzej, Stigwood, stand here by her. Don't take your eyes off her or move a foot away, and use the lash on any that come close.
Sod that, said Fripp. Very well, makes no difference to us. Let's be off, fellas, to the hay-barn and join the villagers. They're roasting a ram and a porker for the banquet. For today is the equinox, a feast, isn't it? While the masters are deliberating, we can make merry.
Let's go. Take a demijohn from the chest, Dee. We'll take a drink.
May we, Mr. Siliphant? Mr. Harsheim?
It's the feast today, and we shan't be heading anywhere tonight.
Ah, what droll designs, Siliphant frowned. They think of naught but feasting and toping. And who will stay here to help guard the wench and wait on Sir Stephan's summons? I shall stay, said Naratin Seker. And I,
said Kenner. Dacre Silliphant looked at them attentively. Finally, he gestured his assent. Fripp and company roared their thanks incoherently. "But have a care down there at that merrymaking," Ola Harsheim warned. "Don't molest any wenches, or you might get jabbed in the privates with a pitchfork." "Sod that! Coming with us, Chloe? And you, Kenner? Won't you think it over?" "No, I'm staying." They left me chained to the post with my hands bound. 2 of them were guarding me, and the 2 standing nearby kept glancing over, watching me. The tall, good-looking woman, and a man with slightly feminine looks and bearing. Odd in some way. The cat, sitting in the middle of the room, yawned broadly, bored, because the mouse it was tormenting had stopped providing amusement. Visigotta said nothing. Bonnart, Ryance, and that Skellen, Tawny Owl, were still debating in the headman's hall. I didn't know what about. I might have expected the worst, but I was resigned. One more arena? Or would they simply kill me? Blow it, I thought. Let it finally be over. Visigotta said nothing. Bonnart sighed. "Don't glower, Skellen," he repeated. "I simply wanted to make some money. It's time, you notice. I retired to sit on the porch and watch pigeons. You gave me 100 florins for the she-rat. You badly wanted her dead. That puzzled me. How much could the maid really be worth, I thought. And I worked out that if she were killed or handed over, she would certainly be worth less than if she were kept. An old principle of economics and commerce. Goods like her keep gaining in value. One can always haggle." Tawny Owl wrinkled his nose as though there was a bad smell in the vicinity. "You're painfully frank, Bonnart, but get to the point, to the explanations. You fled with the girl through the whole of Ebbing, and all of a sudden you show up and start explaining the laws of economics. Tell me what happened."
"What is there to explain?"
Ryance smiled repellently.
"Mr. Bonnart has simply finally grasped who the wench really is and how much she's worth."
Skellen didn't grace him with a glance. He was looking at Bonnart into his fish-like, expressionless eyes. And he pushes this precious girl, this valuable acquisition, meant to guarantee his pension, out into the arena in Claremont, he drawled, and makes her fight to the death. Risks her life, though she's allegedly worth so much alive. What's it about, Bonnart? Because something doesn't add up." "Had she perished in the arena," Bonnart didn't lower his eyes, "it would have meant she wasn't worth anything." "I see." Tawny Owl frowned slightly. "But rather than taking the wench to another arena, you brought her to me. Why, if I might ask?"
"I repeat," Ryance grimaced, "he twigged who she is."
"You're shrewd, Lord Ryance." Bonnart stretched until his joints creaked. "You've guessed right. Yes, it's true that there's one more riddle linked to the witcher girl trained in Kermoren. In Giso, when the noblewoman was robbed, the wench's tongue wagged that she was apparently so important and titled that the baron's daughter was such small beer and so low-ranking she ought to bow down before her. In that case, this Falca, I think to myself, must at least be the daughter of a count. Curious. Firstly, a witcher girl. Are there so many of them? Secondly, in the rat's gang. Thirdly, the imperial coroner is chasing around after her, in person, from Korath to Ebbing, and ordering her killed. And on top of all that, she's a high-born noblewoman. I think to myself, someone ought to ask that wench who she really is. He was silent for a time. At first, he wiped his nose with his cuff. She wouldn't talk, although I asked. I asked with hand, foot, and whip. I didn't want to cut her, but, as luck would have it, a barber surgeon turned up, with instruments for extracting teeth. I bound her to a chair. Skellen swallowed audibly. Ryance smiled. Bonnart studied a cuff. She told me everything before. As soon as she saw the instruments,
Those toothed pliers and pincers. She became more forthcoming at once. It turns out she's a Cintran princess, said Ryance, looking at Tawny Owl. The heiress to the throne, a candidate for marriage to Emperor Emir. Which Lord Skellen didn't deign to tell me, the bounty hunter sneered. He ordered me simply to murder her. He stressed it several times, kill her mercilessly on the spot. Well, Lord Skellen, kill a queen, our emperor's future spouse, with whom, if one is to believe the rumors, the emperor will tie the knot any moment, after which there is to be a general amnesty. Bonnart glared at Skellen as he delivered his oration, but the imperial coroner didn't lower his eyes. And so, the hunter continued, out it comes, a delicate situation. Thus, though I regret it, I gave up my plans regarding the Witcher girl princess. I've brought the whole predicament here to Lord Skellen, to talk, to sort things out, for I'd say that this predicament is a little too much for one Bonnart. A very reasonable conclusion, said a harsh voice from Ryance's bosom. Very reasonable, Mr. Bonnart. What you've caught, gentlemen, is a little too much for you both. Luckily, you still have me. What's that? Skellen leapt up from his chair. What the bloody hell is that? My master, the sorcerer Vilgefortz. Ryance drew from his bosom a tiny silver casket. More precisely, my master's voice, coming from this magical device. It's called a xenogloss. Greetings to you all, said the casket. Shame I can only hear you, but urgent business prevents me from using teleprojection or teleportation. That's all we bloody need, Tawny Owl snarled, but I might have guessed. Ryance is too stupid to act alone and by himself. I might have guessed you were lurking somewhere in the gloom, Vilgefortz. You lurk in the dark like a fat old spider waiting for your cobweb to quiver. What a vivid comparison. Skellen snorted. And don't try to pull the wool over our eyes, Vilgefortz. You're using Ryance and his casket, not because of the amount of work you have, but from fear of the army of sorcerers, your former comrades in the chapter, who are scanning the whole world in search of traces of magic with your algorithm. Were you to try teleportation, they would locate you in an instant. What impressive knowledge. We haven't been introduced. Bonnart bowed quite theatrically before the silver box. But nevertheless, is the Honourable Ryance promising to torture the girl on your instructions and with your authorization, Master Sorcerer? Am I not mistaken? Upon my word, the girl is becoming more and more important with every moment. It turns out she's necessary to everybody. We haven't been introduced, Vilgefortz said from the casket. But I know you, Leo Bonnart. You'd be astonished just how well. And the girl is indeed important. After all, she's the lion cub of Cintra, the elder blood. In keeping with Eithelina's prophecy, her descendants will rule over the world in the future. Why do you need her so much? I only need her placenta, her womb. Once I've removed it, you can take the rest. What do I hear there? Some kind of snorting? Some kind of disgusted sighing and puffing? Whose? Bonnart's, who physically and psychologically maltreats the girl every day in intricate ways? Or Stefan Skellen's, who intends to kill her on the orders of traitors and plotters? Eh? I eavesdropped on them, recalled Kenna, lying on her pallet with her hands behind her head. I stood around the corner and heard their thoughts, and my hair stood on end over my entire body. All of a sudden, I understood the extent of the predicament I got myself into. Yes, yes, said the voice from the xenogloss. You've betrayed your Emperor, Skellen, without hesitation, at the first opportunity. Tawny Owl snorted disdainfully.
The charge of treachery from the lips of such an arch-traitor as you, Vilgefortz, is indeed a great matter. I'd feel honored if it didn't smack of a cheap, vulgar joke.
I'm not accusing you of treachery, Skellen. I'm mocking your naivety and inability to betray. Who are you betraying your emperor for? For Ardal Epdai and Yvette, princelings, their morbid pride piqued, insulted because the emperor rejected their young daughters by planning a marriage with the Sintren? Whereas they were hoping that a new dynasty would emerge from their families, that their families would become the first in the empire, that soon they'd rise even higher than the throne. Emir divested them of that hope at one stroke, and then they decided to amend the course of history. They aren't yet ready with an armed rebellion, but they can at least eliminate the girl that Emir chose over their daughters. Of course, they don't feel like sullying their own delicate aristocratic hands. They found a hired thug, Stefan Skellen, suffering from an excess of ambition. Was it like that, Skellen? Don't you want to tell us?
What for? Tony Owl shouted. And tell whom? As usual, you know everything, don't you? Oh, great mage. Ryans, as usual, doesn't know anything, and that's as it should be, and Bonnart is unconcerned.
You, though, as I've already demonstrated, don't have anything to boast about. The princes bought you with promises, but you're too intelligent not to realize that you'll gain nothing with the lordlings. Today, they need you as a tool to eliminate the Sintren. Tomorrow they'll get rid of you because you're a low-born upstart. Did they offer you Vatier de Rideau's position in the new empire? You surely don't believe that, Skellen. They need Vatier more, since secret services always stay the same, coups or not. They only want to murder using your hands, but they need Vatier to take over the security apparatus. Besides, Vatier is a viscount, and you're a nobody.
Indeed, Tony Owl pouted. I'm too intelligent not to have noticed that. In that case, I ought in turn to betray Ardal Epdai and join you, Vilgefortz? Is that what you're driving at? But I'm not a weathercock. If I support the idea of revolution, it's from conviction and principle. Autocratic tyranny ought to be finished, a constitutional monarchy introduced, and after that, democracy. What? The power of the people. A system where the people will rule. The citizenry of all states through the most worthy and honest representatives chosen in an honest election. Ryans roared with laughter. Bonnart laughed wildly. The xenogloss of the mage Vilgefortz laughed heartily, if somewhat screechingly. All three of them laughed and guffawed, weeping great tears.
Very well,
Bonnart interrupted the merriment.
We haven't gathered here for diversion, but to trade. The girl, for now, doesn't belong to the population of honest citizens of all states. She belongs to me, but I can resell her. What does my Lord Sorcerer have to offer? Does ruling the world interest you? No? Then I shall let you, Vilgefortz said slowly. Be present during what I do to the girl. You'll be able to watch. I know you prefer that kind of voyeurism to all other pleasures.
Bonnart's eyes flashed with white flame, but he was composed.
And more specifically? And more specifically, I'm prepared to pay your fee 20-fold, 2,000 florins. Think, Bonnart. That's a sack of money you won't be able to lift. You're going to need a pack mule. It'll suffice you for your retirement, porch, pigeons, and even for vodka and harlots, if you do it in sensible moderation.
Agreed, mage, sir. The hunter laughed, seemingly blithely.
You've touched my heart with that vodka and those harlots. Let's strike a deal. But I'd also be interested in that observation you suggested, too. I'd prefer, admittedly, to watch her expire in the arena, but I'd also be glad to take a look at your knife work. Throw it in as a bonus. Done. That didn't take you long, Tony Owl observed sardonically. In sooth, Vilgefortz, you've struck up a partnership with Bonnat swiftly and smoothly. A partnership which indeed is and will be a Societas Leonina. But might you have forgotten something? The headman's hall where you're sitting and the Synthron you're trading are surrounded by 24 armed soldiers. My soldiers. My dear Skellen, came Vilgefort's voice from the box. You insult me by thinking I plan to disadvantage you in the exchange. On the contrary, I mean to be extremely generous. I can't guarantee you, as you deign to call it, democracy, but I guarantee you material assistance, logistical support, and access to information, owing to which you'll stop being a tool and a minion to the conspirators, and will become a partner. One whose person and opinion Prince Joachim de Vet, Duke Ardal Epdai, Count Broina, Count Darvi, and all the rest of the blue-blooded plotters will take into account. What if it's a Societas Leonina? Certainly, if Cirilla is the loot, then I shall take the lion's share. Deservedly so, it seems to me. Does it pain you? After all, you will make a considerable profit. If you give me the Synthron, Vattier de Rideau's position is yours for the taking. And as the head of the Secret Service, Stefan Skellen, one can enact all sorts of utopias, perhaps even democracy and honest elections. So, as you see, I give you the fulfillment of your life's dreams and ambitions in exchange for one skinny 15-year-old. Do you see that?
No. Tony Owl shook his head. I only hear it.
Ryans? Yes, master. Give Lord Skellen an example of the quality of our information. Tell him what you got out of Vattier. There's a spy in your troop, said Ryans. What? You heard. Vattier de Rideau has planted someone here. They know about everything you're doing, why you're doing it, and for whom. Vattier has an agent amongst you.
He walked quietly over to her. She almost didn't hear him. Kinna. Neratin? You listened in to my thoughts. Over there, in the headman's hall. You know what I was thinking. So you know who I am. Listen, Neratin. No. You listen, Joanna Selborn. Stefan Skellen is betraying his country and his emperor. He's conspiring. Everyone who's with him will end up on the scaffold, will be torn apart by horses in Millennium Square. I don't know anything, Neratin. I carry out my orders. What do you want from me? I serve the coroner. And who do you serve? The Empire, Viscount de Rideau. What do you want from me? To demonstrate good sense. Go away. I won't betray you. I won't tell. But go away. Please, I can't, Neratin. I'm a simple woman. It is too much for my head. I don't know what to do. Skellen said, Miss Selborn, as though to an officer. Who am I serving? Him? The Emperor? The Empire? And how am I to know? Kenna pushed herself away from the corner of the cottage, flourished a withy, and growled menacingly to drive away some village children who were curiously watching Folker sitting at the foot of the post. Oh, I've got myself in a fine pickle. Oh, there's a whiff of the noose in the air, and horse shit in Millennium Square. I don't know how it will finish, thought Kenna. But I have to go inside her. Enter Folker. Sense her thoughts, if only for a moment. Know what she knows. Understand. She came close, said Ciri, stroking the cat. She was tall, well-groomed, standing out very much from the rest of that pack, even pretty in her own way, and commanding respect. The two who were guarding me, vulgar oafs, stopped swearing when she approached. Visagota said nothing. She, Ciri went on, leaned over and looked me in the eyes. I felt something at once. Something strange. It was as though something had crunched at the back of my head. It hurt. There was a rushing sound in my ears. For a moment, everything went very bright. Something entered me. Something repulsive and slimy. I recognized it. Yennefer had shown it to me in the temple, but I didn't want to allow that woman to do it, so I simply pushed away the thing she'd put into me, pushed it away and expelled it from myself with all the strength I could muster. And the tall woman bent backwards and staggered as though she'd been punched, took 2 steps backwards, and blood rushed from her nose, from both nostrils. Visagota said nothing. But I, Ciri raised her head, understood what had happened. I suddenly felt the power in me. I'd lost it in Korath Desert. I'd renounced it. Later I couldn't draw on it, couldn't make use of it. But she, that woman, had given me the power, had literally shoved the weapon into my hand. It was my chance. Kenna staggered and sat down heavily on the sand, swaying and feeling for the ground as though drunk. Blood was pouring from her nose and down her mouth and chin. What? Andrzej Vierny leapt up, but all of a sudden seized his head in both hands, opened his mouth and uttered a croak. He stared at Stigwood with eyes wide open, but blood was already dripping from the pirate's nose and ears, and his eyes had clouded over. Andrzej dropped to his knees, looking at Neratin Seika, who was standing to one side and watching impassively. Neratin, help! Seika didn't move. He was looking at the girl. She turned her eyes on him, and he tottered. It's not necessary, he quickly forestalled. I'm on your side. I want to help you. Here, I'll cut through your bonds. Take the knife. Cut through the collar yourself. I'll fetch the horses. Seika! Andrzej Vierny stammered out, joking. You The girl struck him with a gaze, and he fell onto Stigwood, who was lying motionless and curled up in a fetal position. Kenna still couldn't stand up. Sticky drops of blood dripped onto her chest and stomach. Alarm! Yelled Chloe Stitz, suddenly appearing from behind the cottages and dropping a mutton rib. Alarm! Silifant! Skellen! The girl's getting away! Ciri was already mounted. She was holding a sword. Yee! Kelpie! Alarm! Kenna was clawing the sand. She couldn't get up. Her legs were totally unresponsive, as though made of wood. A psionic, she thought. I've encountered a super psionic. The girl is about 10 times stronger than me. I'm lucky she didn't kill me. How come I'm still conscious? A group was now running from the cottages, led by Ola Harsheim, Bert Brigden, and Tilikrada, and the guards from the gate, Dacre Silifant and Boreas Munn, hurried into the courtyard. Ciri wheeled her horse around, yelled and galloped towards the river, but armed men were already running from there. Skellen and Bonnart dashed out of the hall, Bonnart holding his sword. Neratin Seika yelled, rode his horse at them, and knocked them both down. Then he hurled himself straight from the saddle at Bonnart and pinned him to the ground. Ryance dashed out onto the threshold and looked on, dumbfounded. Seize her! Skellen roared, springing up from the ground. Seize her or kill her! Alive! Ryance howled. Alive! Kenna saw Ciri, driven away from the riverside palisade, rein her mare around and speed towards the gate. She saw Cabernic Turant leap forward and try to drag her from the saddle, saw a sword flash and a crimson outpouring gush from Turant's neck. Didi Vargas and Fripp the Younger also saw it. They decided not to bar the girl's way, but bolted between the shacks. Bonnart jumped to his feet, pushed Neratin Seika away with a blow of his sword pommel, and smote him terribly, diagonally across his breast, and then raced after Ciri. Neratin, slit open and spurting blood, managed to catch him by the legs and only released him when he was skewered to the sand with the point of a sword. But those few seconds of delay were sufficient. The girl spurred her mare, fleeing from Siliphant and Mun. Skellen came up stealthily and wolf-like from the left and swung an arm. Kenna saw something sparkle in flight, saw the girl writhe and sway in the saddle, and a fountain of blood erupt from her face. She leaned back so far that for a moment she was lying on the mare's croup. She didn't fall, but straightened up and remained in the saddle, then pressed herself to the horse's neck. The black mare jostled the armed men and raced straight for the gate. Behind her ran Mun, Siliphant, and Chloe Stitz with a crossbow. "She won't jump it! She's ours!" Mun yelled triumphantly. "No horse can clear 7 feet!" "Don't shoot, Chloe!" Chloe Stitz didn't hear in the general uproar. She stopped, put the crossbow to her cheek. It was widely known that Chloe never missed. "She's dead meat!" she cried. "Dead meat!" Kenna saw a man whose name she didn't know run forward, raise a crossbow, and shoot Chloe point blank in the back. The bolt passed right through her in an explosion of blood. Chloe dropped without a sound. The mare reached the gate and drew back its head a little, and jumped. It soared, and quite simply scaled the gate, gracefully gathered up its forehooves, and streamed over it like a black silk ribbon. Its curled hind hooves didn't even brush the upper bar. "Ye gods!" screamed Dacre Siliphant. "Ye gods, what a horse! Worth its weight in gold!" "The mare goes to whoever catches her!" Skellen screamed. "To horse! Mount up and after her!" The search party galloped through the finally open gate, kicking up dust. Bonnart and Boreas Mun galloped ahead of everyone. Kenna stood up with effort and immediately staggered and sat down heavily on the sand. Her legs were tingling painfully. Cabernet Turant wasn't moving, but lay in a red puddle with arms and feet splayed apart. Andrzej Vienny tried hard to lift the still unconscious Stigwood. Chloe Stitz, huddled up on the sand, seemed as tiny as a child. Ola Harsheim and Bert Brigden dragged the short man, the one who'd killed Chloe before Skellen. Tawny Owl was panting and trembling with fury. From the bandolier slung across his chest, he took out another Orion, the same kind of steel star he had wounded the girl's face with a moment earlier. "May you rot in hell, Skellen," said the short man. Kenna recalled his name. Makessa. Jedediah Makessa, a Gemarian. She had first met him in Rocane. Tawny Owl stooped and swung his arm vigorously. The 6-toothed star whined in the air and plunged deeply into Makessa's face, between his eye and nose. He didn't even cry out when hit, but simply began shaking violently and spasmodically in Harsheim and Brigden's grip. He shook for a long time and bared his teeth so ghoulishly that everybody turned their heads away. Everybody except Tawny Owl. "Pull my Orion from him, Ulla," said Stefan Skellen, when at last the corpse was hanging inertly in the two men's arms. "And bury that scum in the muck with that other scum, the hermaphrodite. Not a trace shall remain of those two execrable traitors." The wind suddenly howled and clouds massed. It suddenly became dark. The guards on the citadel walls shouted. The Skara sisters were snoring a duet. Code pissed noisily into the empty bucket. Kenna pulled the blanket up under her chin. She was thinking back. They didn't catch the girl. She vanished. Simply vanished. Boreas Mun, unprecedentedly, lost the black mare's trail after about 3 miles. Suddenly, without warning, it became dark, the wind flattening trees almost to the ground. The rain lashed down, nay, even thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. Bonnart didn't give up. They returned to Unicorn. They all yelled at one another, interrupting and shouting each other down. Bonnart, Tawny Owl, Ryance, and the fourth, mysterious, inhuman, croaking voice. Then they ordered the entire Hansa to mount up, unlike those, like me, who were unable to ride. They banded together peasants with torches and drove them into the forests. They returned just before dawn, with nothing, if you didn't count the horror in their eyes. The tales, Kenna recalled, only began a few days later. In the beginning, everyone was too afraid of Tawny Owl and Bonnart. They were so furious it was better to get out of their way. Even Bert Brigden, an officer, was hit across the head with the handle of a knout for some imprudent word. But later, people talked about what had happened during the chase, about the tiny straw unicorn from the little chapel that suddenly grew to the size of a dragon and scared the horses so much the riders fell from them, only miraculously avoiding breaking their necks. About the cavalcade of fiery-eyed apparitions galloping across the sky on skeleton horses, led by a terrible skeleton king, ordering his phantom servants to wipe out the black mare's hoofprints with their ragged cloaks. About the macabre choir of goat-sucker nightjars calling, "Liquor of blood, liquor of blood." About the horrific wailing of the ghastly Bian-Shi, the harbinger of death. The wind, rain, clouds, bushes, and fantastically shaped trees. And fear, which turns everything into nightmares, commented Boreas Munn, who had been there after all. That's the whole explanation. But the nightjars were screaming, as nightjars always do, he added. And the trail, the hoofprints which suddenly vanish as though the horse had flown up into the heavens. The face of Boreas Munn, a tracker able to track down a fish in water, stiffened at the question. The wind, he answered. The wind covered the tracks with sand and foliage. There's no other explanation. Some people even believed, Kenner recalled. Some people even believed that they were all natural or predictable phenomena, and even laughed at them. But they stopped laughing after Dundara. No one laughed after Dundara. He stepped back involuntarily and sucked in air on seeing her. She had mixed gooselard with soot from the chimney, and with the grease paint thus created, had blackened her eye sockets and eyelids, extending them with long lines to her ears and temples. She looked like a demon. From the fourth tussock up to the high forest, keeping to the very edge, he repeated the directions. Then along the river until you get to 3 dead trees, and then due west through a hornbeam woodland. When you see the pines, ride along the edge and count the tracks. Turn into the 9th, and don't turn off after that. Then it'll be the Dundara settlement. There's a hamlet on the north side, a few cottages, and beyond them, at the crossroads, a tavern. I remember. I'll make it, don't worry. Be most vigilant at the bends in the river. Beware of places where the reeds thin out, and places covered in knot grass. And should darkness overtake you before the pine forest, stop and wait until morning. Under no circumstances ride across the bogs at night. It's almost a new moon now, and the clouds, I know. As far as the lakeland goes, head north across the hills. Avoid main roads. The main roads are heaving with soldiers. When you get to a river, a large river, which is called the Silta, you're over halfway. I know. I have the map you drew. Oh, yes, indeed. Ciri checked her harness and saddlebags yet again, mechanically, not knowing what to say, putting off what had to be said. It was agreeable to have you to stay, he forestalled her. Truly. Farewell, O witcher girl. Farewell, O hermit. Thank you for everything. She was already in the saddle, already prepared to click her tongue at Kelpie when he came over and took her arm. Ciri, stay. See out the winter. I'll reach the lake before the frosts. But later, if it's as you said, nothing will matter any longer. I'll teleport back to Thaneth, to the school in Aretuza, to Madame Rita. Visagota, like it used to be. The Tower of the Swallow is a legend. Remember, it's just a legend. I'm just a legend, she said bitterly. Have been since my birth. Zirael, the swallow, the unexpected child, the chosen one, the child of destiny, the child of the elder blood. I'm going, Visagota. Farewell. Farewell, Ciri. The tavern by the crossroads past the hamlet was empty. Cyprian Fripp the Younger and his 3 companions had forbidden the local people from entering and drove away travellers. They, however, spent their time eating and drinking, never leaving the smoky, gloomy tavern, which smelled as a tavern usually does in winter, when the doors and windows are kept shut, of sweat, cats, mice, foot traps, pine wood, farts, fat, burnt food, and wet, steaming clothing.
"Sod this rotten place," Centurion Yutsyanovitz, a Gemarian, said, for probably the 100th time, gesturing towards the serving wenches to bring him vodka. "Damn that tawny owl, ordering us to hunker down in this mangy hole. I'd sooner be riding through forests with the patrols." "Then you must be stupid," replied Didi Vargas. "It's bloody freezing outside. I'd rather be here in the warm, with the maid close at hand."
He slapped the wench hard on the bottom. She squealed, not very convincingly, and with evident apathy. She was slow-witted, to tell the truth. Working in a tavern had only taught her that when they slap or pinch you, you should squeal. Cyprian Fripp and his company had already begun to take advantage of the two serving wenches the day after arriving. The innkeeper was afraid to complain, and the wenches too dim-witted to think about protesting. Life had taught them that if a wench protested, she got hit. It was more judicious, usually, to wait till they get bored.
"That there Falker,"
Rispat Lepointe, bored, took up another stock topic of their bored evening conversations.
"croaked somewhere in the forests, I tell you. I saw Skellen slice her face open with the Orion and the blood shooting out in the fountain. She can't have come through that, I tell you." "Tawny owl, mister," Yutsyanovitz stated. "He barely scratched her with the Orion. Granted, he carved her face up good and proper, saw it for myself. But did it stop the wench jumping the gate? Did she fall from her horse? Not a chance. And we measured the gate afterwards. 7 foot effing 2. And she jumped it. And then what? You couldn't have stuck a knife blade between the saddle and her little arse." "Blood was pouring from her," protested Rispat Lepointe. "She rode away, I'm telling you. Rode off and then fell and croaked in a hollow somewhere. Wolves and birds at the carcass. Martins finished it off, and ants. That's the end. Derayav. So, we're sitting here in vain, drinking our money away. Our money it is, for I don't seem to see any pay." "It can't be that no traces or signs of a corpse are left," said Didi Vargas with conviction. "Something's always left. The skull, pelvis, or one of the bigger bones. Ryans, that saucer, will eventually find Folker's remains. Then the matter will be over." "And perhaps then they'll drive us so hard we'll recall with delight this idleness and this lousy pigsty." Cyprian Fripp the Younger threw a bored glance at the tavern's walls, on which he already knew every nail and every damp patch. "And that poxy booze. And those too. What smell of onions. And when you rat them, they lie like calves, staring at the ceiling and picking their teeth." "Everything's better than this tedium," Yutsyanovitz stated. "I feel like howling. Let's fucking do something. Anything. Shall we torch the village or what?"
The door creaked. The sound was so unexpected that all 4 of them leapt up from their seats.
"Scram," Didi Vargas roared. "Get out, old man. Beggar. Filthy bastard. Get back outside."
"Leave him." Fripp, bored, waved an arm.
"See? He's lugging some pipes. He's just a beggar. Probably an old soldier who earns a crust by playing and singing in taverns. It's cold and rainy outside. Let him stay. Just well away from us."
Yutsyanovitz showed the beggar where to sit. "Or we'd be cruel with me lice. I can see from here what specimens are crawling over him. You'd think they were tortoises, not lice."
"Give him some victuals, landlord."
Fripp the Younger beckoned imperiously.
"And us some hooch."
The beggar took off his bulky fur hat and solemnly gave off a stench that filled the room.
"Thanks be to you, my lord," he said, "for today is Samhain's Eve, a holy day. It doesn't befit to drive anyone away on a holy day, to be soaked and frozen in the rain. It befits to regale a body on a holy day."
"In truth," Rispat Lepointe slapped himself in the forehead.
"Today is Samhain's Eve, the end of October.
A night of witchcraft." The beggar slurped the watery broth he was brought. "A night of ghosts and horrors."
"Ho, ho," said Yutsyanovitz. "The old gimmer, he Jew, is about to divert us with beggarly tales." "Let him divert us," Didi Vargas yawned. "It's better than this boredom."
"Sawing," repeated Cyprian Fripp the Younger. "It's already 5 weeks since Unicorn, and 2 weeks that we've been here. 2 whole weeks. Sawing! Ha!" "A night of portents." The beggar licked the spoon, fished something out of the bowl with a finger and ate it. "A night of dread and witchcraft."
"What did I say?" Yutsyanovitz grinned. "We'll have a beggar's tale."
The beggar sat up straight, scratched himself and hiccuped.
"Samhain Eve," he began with emphasis. The last night before the November new moon is the last night of the old year to the Elves, and when the new day dawns, it'll be their new year. Thus, there is among the Elves a custom that on the night of Samhain, every fire in the homestead and yard should be lit with a single pitch taper, and the rest of the taper stowed well away until May, when Beltane is kindled with the same flame. Then, they say, there will be prosperity. Not only Elves do thus, some of our folk do likewise, to protect themselves from evil spirits.
Ghosts? Yet snorted. Just listen to the old fart.
It's Samhain night, the beggar said in an excited voice. On this night, spirits walk the earth. The spirits of the dead knock on the windows. Let us in, they moan. Let us in. Then they should be given honey and groats, all sprinkled with vodka.
I'd sooner sprinkle my own throat with vodka, Rispat LePointe chortled, and your ghosts, old man, can kiss me right here.
Oh, my lord, don't make fun of ghosts. They're liable to hear, and they're vengeful. Today, it's Samhain Eve, a night of dread and witchcraft. Prick up your eyes. Do you hear something rustling and tapping all about? It's the dead coming from the beyond. They want to steal into homesteads, to warm themselves by the fire and eat their fill. There, over the bare stubble fields and leafless forests, rages a gale and a frost. The poor ghosts are chilled, so they head towards homesteads where there's fire and warmth. Then one mustn't forget to put out food for them in a bowl on the step or on the threshing floor, for if the phantoms find nothing there, they go into cottages themselves after midnight to search for...
Oh my! One of the serving wenches whispered loudly and immediately squealed as Fripp pinched her behind. Not a bad tale, he said, but a long way off being a good one. Pour the old man a mug of mulled wine, landlord, and perhaps he'll tell a good one. The test of a good ghost story, boys, is when you goose the wenches and there's something gross they don't even notice. The men cackled, and the two girls, whose degree of attentiveness was being tested, squealed. The beggar quaffed the mulled wine, slurping loudly and burping.
Just don't get drunk or fall asleep here, Dede Vargas warned menacingly. We aren't giving you drink for nothing. Tell a tale, sing, play their pipes. We want merriment.
The beggar opened his mouth, where a single tooth stood like a white milepost in a dark step.
It is Samhain, my lord. What music? What playing? 'Tis not allowed. Samhain's music is the gale outside. It's the howling of werewolves and vampires, the wailing and moaning of vengeful ghosts and ghouls grinding their teeth. The banshee howls and cries, and whoever hears her cry is destined to die soon. Every evil spirit leaves its hideaway. Witches fly to their last coven before winter. Samhain is a night of frights, of marvels and visions. Don't venture into the forest, or a leshy will maul you to death. Don't pass through the boneyard, or a corpse will seize you. Better not to leave your house at all, and to be on the safe side, stick a new iron knife into the threshold. No evil will dare to pass over it. Whereas womenfolk must closely guard their children, for on Samhain night a Razalker or Weeper may steal her child and replace it with a loathsome changeling. And if any woman is with child, she better not go outside, for a night spirit may enchant the fetus in her womb. Instead of a babe, a strigger with iron teeth will be born.
Lorks!
With iron teeth? First it bites its mother's breast, then her hands, it bites her face. Oh, but now I have a hunger.
Have her bone. There's still meat on it. Might be healthy for old people to eat too much. They might choke and peg it.
Oh, all right. Bring in more wine, wench. Well, old man, go on about those ghosts. Samhain, my lord, is the last night for spectres to make merry. Later, the frost takes their strength away, so they sink into the chasm beneath the earth, from where they don't stick their noses out the whole winter. For that reason, from Samhain right until February, to the holy day of Imolach, is the best time for an expedition to haunted places to search for treasure. If, when it's warm, someone pokes around by a white sparrow, for example, the white will awake as sure as eggs is eggs, jump out annoyed and devour the rummager. But from Samhain to Imolach, poke and dig around as much as you're able. The white sleeps soundly like an old bear.
What has he dreamed up, the old bugger?
But I speaks the truth, my lord. Yes, yes. Sorwin is a magical, awful night, but also at once the best for all kinds of prophecies and predictions. On such a night, it's worth telling fortunes and prophesying from bones and palms, and from a white cock, from an onion, from cheese, from a coney's innards, from a rotting flittermouse. Fripp spat on the ground. The night of Sorwin, a night of frights and phantoms. Better to sit tight at home, with all the family, by the fire. With all the family, Cyprian Fripp repeated, suddenly grinning voraciously at his comrades. All the family, see? Along with her what's been slowly hiding away from us in the bushes. The blacksmith's daughter, Yutz Yanowitz guessed at once. That golden-haired peach. You're cute, Fripp. Perhaps we'll catch her at home today. Well, boys, shall we dart over to the blacksmith's shack? Ooh, why not now? Didi Vargas stretched vigorously. I can see that blacksmith's daughter in front of me now, I tell you. Ooh, those titties bouncing, her little bottom wiggling. We ought to have taken her then, not wait, but take her Silliphant, that stupid stickler. Well, but now Silliphant ain't here, and the blacksmith's daughter's at home, waiting. We've already hacked down the village headman with a battle-axe, Rispat grimaced. We butchered the churl who came to help him. Do we need more corpses? The blacksmith and his son are built like oak trees. We won't take them with fear. We need to cut 'em up. Fripp completed the sentence calmly. Just cut 'em a little, nothing more. Drink up. We'll get setting right to the village. We'll have ourselves a sawing. We'll don our sheepskins with the fur on the outside. We'll bellow and clamour. The boys will think it's devils or whites. Shall we fetch the blacksmith's daughter here to our quarters, or make merry our way, in the Gemarian style, in front of her family? The one doesn't rule out the other. Fripp the younger looked out into the night through the window's oiled parchment. What a blizzard's whipped up, damn it! The poplars are bending right over. Ho, 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 said the beggar from over his mug. That isn't the wind, my lord. That's not a blizzard. It's witches dashing astride their brooms, though some are in stone mortars, sweeping over the tracks with their brooms. Who knows when one of them may cross a fellow's path in the forest, or steal up from behind? Who knows when she may attack, and she has teeth like these? It's children you should be frightened with, witches, beggar. Don't speak, my liege, at the wrong time, for I'll tell you more, that the most menacing hags, the countesses and duchesses of the witchly state, ho, 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 they don't ride on brooms, or on peels, or in mortars, no, those ones gallop on their black cats. It be the truth, for on Sarwin Eve, on that one and only night of the year, hags' cats turn into mares as black as pitch, and woe betide he who on a night as black as a pall hears the clatter of hooves and sees a hag on a black mare. He who meets such a witch will not shun death. The witch will twist him around like a leaf blown in the wind and carry him off to the beyond. You can finish when we return and come up with a good tale, you bloody beggar, and make ready your pipes. When we return, there'll be revels here. There'll be dancing, and the blacksmith's maid will be dandled. What is it, Rispat? Rispat Lapointe, who had gone out onto the porch to relieve himself, returned at a run with a face as white as snow. He was gesticulating frantically, pointing at the door. He didn't manage to utter a word, and there was no need. A horse neighed loudly from the courtyard. The black mare, said Fripp. His face almost stuck to the parchment. The same black mare! It's her! A witch! It's Folker, you dolt! It's her ghost! Rispat sucked in air. Her phantom! She can't have survived! She died and is returned as a spectre on the night of Samhain. She will come at night, like a black pall, muttered the beggar, pressing the empty mug to his belly. And who shall meet her will not avoid death. Weapons! Get your weapons! Fripp said excitedly. Quickly! Cover the door from both sides. Don't you understand? We've struck lucky. Falca doesn't know about us. She's come here to get warm. Cold and hunger have driven her out of her hideout. Straight into our arms. Tawny Owl and Ryance will shower us with gold. Get your weapons. The door creaked. The beggar hunched over the table and squinted. His sight was poor. His eyes were old and ruined, fogged and chronically sore. On top of that, it was gloomy and smoky in the tavern,
so the beggar could barely see the slender figure that had entered the main chamber from the hallway, dressed in a jerkin of muskrat pelts, wearing a hood and a shawl which covered her face. The beggar had good hearing, though. He heard the soft cry of one of the serving wenches, the clatter of the other's clogs, and the innkeeper's hushed curse. He heard the scraping of swords in scabbards, and Cyprian Fripp's quiet, scornful voice. "Why have you, Folker? Didn't expect us here, did ya?" "Oh, yes, I did," the beggar heard, and he trembled at the sound of her voice. He saw the slender figure move and heard a sigh of terror, the muffled scream of one of the wenches. He couldn't see that the girl named Folker had removed her hood and shawl. He couldn't see her hideously disfigured face, or her eyes painted all around with a paste of soot and grease like a demon's. "I am not Folker," said the girl. The beggar saw again her fast, blurred movement, saw something shine fierily in the light of the cressets. "I'm Ciri of Caer Morhen. I'm a witcher. I've come here to kill you." The beggar, who had seen many a tavern brawl in his life, had a practiced method for avoiding injury. He ducked under the table, curled up, and grabbed the table legs tightly. From that position, naturally, he couldn't see anything, and didn't want to. He was clutching the table tightly, and it was sliding around the room with the other furniture, amidst clattering, banging, and crunching, the thudding of heavily booted feet, curses, shouts, grunts, and the clanging of steel. One of the serving wenches was yelling shrilly, unremittingly. Someone tumbled onto the table, shifting it along with the beggar, and fell onto the floor alongside him. The beggar yelled, feeling hot blood splash onto him. Didi Vargas, the one who had at first wanted to drive him away, the beggar recognized him by the brass buttons on his jerkin, croaked horribly and thrashed about, spurting blood and flailing his arms around. One of his wild movements caught the beggar right in the eye. He could no longer see anything. The screaming serving wench choked, fell silent, took a breath, and began to yell again at a somewhat higher pitch. Someone sprawled on the floor with a thud, and blood splashed the freshly cleaned pine floorboards. The beggar couldn't tell that the dying man was Rispat Lapointe, slashed in the side of the neck by Ciri. He didn't see her turn a pirouette right in front of Fripp and Janowitz's noses, and pass through their guards like a shade, like grey smoke. Janowitz slipped behind her with a swift, soft, feline turn. He was an expert swordsman. Standing firmly on his right foot, he struck out with a long, extended thrust, aiming at the girl's face, straight at her hideous scar. He couldn't miss, but he did. He was too slow to shield himself. She lunged from close up, two-handed, cutting him across his chest and stomach, and at once sprang back, whirled around, evading Fripp's blow, and slashing the crouching Janowitz across the neck. Janowitz pitched over head-first against a bench. Fripp leapt over the bench and the corpse and struck powerfully. Ciri parried obliquely, made a half-turn, and jabbed him in the side above his hip. Fripp staggered, sprawled onto the table, and instinctively extended his arms in front of himself to keep his balance. The moment he rested his hand on the table, Ciri hacked it off in a swift slash. Fripp raised the stump, spurting blood, examined it intently, and then looked at the hand lying on the table, and suddenly dropped, sitting down heavily on the floor with a thud, just as though he had slipped on some soap. He sat, yelling, and then began to bay, with a savage, high-pitched, long-drawn-out, wolf-like howl. Crouching under the table, the blood-drenched beggar heard the ghastly duet continue for a moment, the monotonously yelling serving wench and the spasmodically howling Fripp. The wench was the first to fall silent, her screaming ending in an inhuman, choking croak. Fripp simply fell silent. "Mama," he suddenly said, utterly distinctly and lucidly. "Dear Mama, what is this? What has happened to me? What's the matter with me?" "You're dying," said the disfigured girl. What was left of the beggar's hair stood up on his head. He clenched his teeth on the sleeve of his coat in order to stop them chattering. Cyprian Fripp, the younger, made a sound as though he was having difficulty swallowing. After that, He uttered no more sounds. None at all. It was completely silent.
What have you done?
The innkeeper groaned in the silence.
What have you done, girl?
I'm a witcher. I kill monsters.
They'll hang us. They'll burn down the tavern and the village.
I kill monsters, she repeated. But in her voice suddenly appeared something like surprise, something like hesitancy, uncertainty. The innkeeper moaned and groaned and sobbed. The beggar slowly emerged from under the table, moving away from Didi Vargas's body and his hideously mutilated face.
You ride a black mare, he mumbled, on a night as black as a pall. You sweep away the tracks behind you.
The girl turned around and looked at him. She had already wrapped the shawl around her face, and the black-ringed spectral eyes looked out from over it.
Whoever meets you, the beggar mumbled, will not avoid death, for you yourself are death.
The girl looked long at him, long, and rather dispassionately.
You're right,
she said finally. Somewhere in the swamps, far away, but much closer than before, a banshee's plaintive wailing sounded a second time. Visogota lay on the floor where he had collapsed as he was getting out of bed. He found, to his horror, that he couldn't stand up. His heart pounded in his throat, choking him. Now he knew whose death the elven apparition's nocturnal cry was auguring. Life was beautiful, he thought, in spite of everything.
Oh, gods, he whispered. I don't believe in you. But if you do exist...
A dreadful pain suddenly exploded in his chest, behind his breastbone. Somewhere in the swamps, far away, but much nearer than before, the banshee howled savagely for the third time.
If you do exist, protect the witcher girl on the road.
I have enormous eyes, all the better to see you with, shrieked the great iron wolf. I have enormous paws, all the better to seize and hug you with. Everything about me is enormous, everything, and soon you will discover it for yourself. Why are you looking at me so strangely, little girl? Why do you not answer? The witcher girl smiled. I have a surprise for you. Florence Delanoy, The Surprise, from the book Fairy Tales and Stories.